I mean, for me personally, I think everybody at Tellor would have a similar story in the fact that they were into something sort of unrelated or not developer related before getting into crypto. But me, it's even more so. Like I studied art in undergrad, and so how did I end up here? It was kind of a winding road, but basically for the early 2010s, sorry, we got lights shutting off here at the office. In about 2013, I started working as a consultant for a local in Baltimore, Maryland, Bitcoin startup called Bitsy. They didn't last very long. Great guys. They were creating like merchant services for local shops in Baltimore to accept Bitcoin. You know, they were like real evangelizers for crypto. But they were way too early for that. It was a uphill battle for them. But for me, they introduced me to Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they were paying me in Bitcoin, which I didn't even know at the time. I was just upset at the volatility of this stuff, and I couldn't sell it fast enough because I had to pay my rent in Bitcoin, and so, or I didn't pay it in Bitcoin, but I had to cash out. And I remember waking up one day and I was just furious that it dropped like 20%, and I was like, this is a ripoff. But anyway, I ended up keeping some of the I don't know what's going on with the lights here. They think
no one's home, I guess.
But yeah, anyway, I ended up keeping a little bit of it, enough that it drew my attention. It drew my attention to the fact that this Bitcoin was not worth something. And so what I did was I started to look into it, and that's kind of how I got into crypto. I think a lot of people got into it through trading as well. And so I started to like look at other cryptocurrencies, and I dug into Ethereum and all the tokens that were coming out in 2017 and 2016. And so I guess fast forward, in late 2017, I met my would-be business partners, and it was someone from my local town, and he was hosting the local Bitcoin meetup. You know, one of these really small town Bitcoin meetups that 5 people show up to have a beer and talk about shit coins. But I found out he was a developer, and he was just started a startup and wanted to do something with decentralized derivatives on Ethereum. And I was like, whoa, what is that? You know, like, oh, you can actually do something more than just trade these things around. Like that was at the time was mind blowing to me and really interesting. And I was a consultant for small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so I loved that sort of, that whole spirit. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going out for a beer with him. And then, you know, he said, I just, started working at this office, this one right here. And I just brought on my first, my friend Brenda, and she's going to help out. You should come to the office one day. And so, and that's kind of how it started. I showed up and they had just started this thing called Decentralized Derivatives Association. And we're building this derivatives protocol on Ethereum. And I sort of just stuck around. It kept on coming and worked for free. And I don't know if I'm over answering your question, but this is totally leading into the history of Tellor, if you want me to go there.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly leading.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's perfect. I mean, it sounds like sort of you were, in a way, very early member of sort of what has become DeFi, right, in the community, and, being able to have all these different derivatives and things.
Yeah, no, we were really early. It was way before, we like to say we were in DeFi before DeFi was cool.
Exactly.
That's true.
So yeah, so would love to kind of hear about kind of the rest of that journey, I guess.
Yeah. So this was early 2018 now, and we got an Ethereum Foundation grant, which we were running on. that was our raise, so to speak. That's how we sort of paid the bills. Nick, so it's Nick, Brenda, and I that started Tellor, but we also the ones that started this previous startup. I'll tell you a little bit about them. They both left the government. They worked there. We're all from the DC area, and they both left the government. Brenda was doing, you could say data science, and Nick was working for the CFTC, the derivatives regulating body of the United States. And he was doing research on cryptocurrencies for the CFTC, and they're both economists. So they left the government as economists to start this startup in early 2018. And we all got this, we all sort of quit our day jobs and got this Ethereum grant to say, like, let's make 2018 the year that we make this thing happen. It was originally called DDA. We rebranded to Daxia. And so what we were doing was we basically created a protocol where you could lock Ethereum into a smart contract, and it would issue out these tokens that would represent the short and long side of that asset. It would be Bitcoin, for example. So we did short and long Bitcoin tokens, and they would last, these derivatives would last a week. And so at the end of the week, the contract would, it needed an oracle, as you can imagine where I'm leading to, but at the end of the week, it would settle out. And those tokens would then be, you could redeem them, and then that smart contract that was holding the Ethereum would divvy the right amounts out to the two parties. So at the time, we were using a centralized oracle. There's a company called Oracleize. Well, actually, they're called Provable now, formerly Oracleize, and they're a great centralized oracle. It worked really well, but for us, we were saying at the time we were the first decentralized derivatives protocol on Ethereum. But wait a second, can we really say that? It kind of really stuck in our sides a little bit. Like we couldn't stand that we couldn't solve the oracle issue, and there wasn't a good option. Chainlink, even Chainlink wasn't live yet at the time. They were just a white paper, and they were on testnet, and we sort of dug into it, and it wasn't going to be right anyway for us. We didn't feel like it was central. We thought it was centralized, and so we sort of went to the drawing board. There was a hackathon in summer of 2018 in DC called Angel Hack, and we decided to hack up an idea. I think we were inspired by, there was a project called, if you guys remember, 0x Bitcoin, that built a sort of Bitcoin protocol on Ethereum. And so that kind of got our wheels turning about making a mineable oracle token. And that became like this thing called the proof of work oracle. And we had after that hackathon, we had this sort of rudimentary bones for what would later become Tellor. And, but, we did that in the summer, and we didn't really know what we had with it. We knew that if we couldn't find a better oracle provider, like we had this thing we could launch with, but it was still just a hack. So we just kept on being Daxia, and we were trying to raise money, and it just wasn't successful. We were having a hard time raising, and we were running out of money. And at the end of, it was the very beginning of 2019, we had like 1 month left. We're all like, okay, guys, we're all gonna go get jobs again and do Daxia part-time, and like, we're gonna make this work. It was really depressing. And that was around the time that we heard about an opportunity for this thing called Binance Labs, which is Binance's accelerator program thing, incubation program. And we met somebody at DevCon 4 in Prague that later on tipped us off about like this opportunity. He's like, I think you guys would be good for this. And, maybe that Oracle idea you're talking about would be something you could do. And so we went ahead and applied, and we got in. And we weren't like, Tellor wasn't even a thing. like once we applied, we were like, okay, we better name this thing and give it a brand and a website. So we came up with Tellor. And we put together like a really crappy website and wrote a white paper and, turned ourselves into a project. And we got
Very
into,
cool.
we were so surprised that we got in. And that's how Tellor became a thing. And I could go further into, everything from then till now too, because that's its own story. We went out to
Yeah.
Berlin for, the incubation program was in Berlin, Germany for 3 months. We left Nick's got 2 kids. Had a pregnant wife and Brenda's sweet dog, Charlie. We all just like uprooted our lives to go to a foreign country to build this project. It was a really cool time.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely get to talking about that too. I guess it's kind of funny to think about. 2017 doesn't feel that long ago, but really the difference in what was available then and now, I think especially along that line of like centralization versus like decentralization, is pretty stark, right? Like there's a lot of new things that have come out in the last 3 years that have really enabled kind of full end-to-end decentralization within an app, right? As notably Oracle's being a big piece of that puzzle, right? I guess sort of going back to when you were kind of working with Daxia and like kind of thinking like, are we really central or decentralized, or what are we? Like, I guess what was sort of like for you maybe the motivating factor for making sure that you really were decentralized the whole way through? Like why was that actually important, right? I mean, that's what motivated building out Tellor eventually. Like why is that the kind of mind worm that stuck with you?
Yeah. So like we always have been this group that are very philosophically conservative in these regards. We have a strong set of values, and we've always been like, no matter what we build, it's going to be decentralization first. It's going to be about censorship resistance. Even with Daxia, like we wanted to be, even regulatory concerns we had. We wanted to make sure we did things the right way, and we didn't want to be like one of these ICO projects that were coming out, because at the time, if you recall, it was crazy. 2017 was nuts, and we saw all these projects raising money, and we knew that they were junk because they didn't have anything but a white paper or an idea, or even it was just a bad idea that, we just didn't want to be, we wanted to be different. And at the time, being different was actually standing up for something and wanting to be truly decentralized and not just trying to do a money grab. It was hard. It was hard to not fall for that, because we were trying to do, like I was saying, we were trying to raise and we couldn't raise and we're running out of money. And you see other projects that were doing something similar, but they would have one thing that would jeopardize our values that we couldn't do, but they could, and so they win. Like we weren't going to create a token project that would end up having 60 or 80% of the tokens held by a couple of VCs and us, because it doesn't matter how amazing your protocol is, it's still centralized because all the power is in the hands of a few. So like, when we designed, and we didn't have a token with Daxia, so we didn't have that problem. But when we came to building Tellor and we needed a token, we actually needed one to make it work. We were like, okay, so how do we do this without, doing the ICO boom thing? And so we did no pre-mine. We settled on, we're not going to do a pre-mine, and we're not going to do an ICO. No pre-sales, no IEOs, which became the thing after ICOs. It was IEOs, initial exchange offerings, which are similar, I think. But they all come down to like, how can we get a bunch of your tokens in the hands of investors early on for way cheap and then dump them on everybody else? And okay, yeah, the project gets to raise a lot of money, and that can be useful because now you can become a business. But then you're a business that almost can never get out from under the shadow of your your raise or your launch, like how now it's called a fair launch, like sometimes you can't escape that. And what incentive do you have if you're like, everybody's a multimillionaire at the company before you even done anything?
Right.
So that was a really long-winded way of answering that. We found these, we got into crypto because it's cool tech and it's, cutting edge technology and it's just fun to be a part of a new industry like that. But also because of the values behind Bitcoin and Ethereum and about creating unstoppable applications and censorship proof computers, those kind of things, what DeFi is supposed to stand for, so we didn't want to lose ourselves. And it's easy when you're like just starting to say like, I'm not going to lose my values. But when you're running out of money, it's like, maybe those values aren't so important, but we
Exactly.
we stuck to it.
Oh yeah, it's good to hear. I mean, for those here on the call who weren't around in 2017, it wasn't a crazy thing to have people raising tens of millions of dollars on white papers, right?
Yes.
Which was is insane, right? It was really truly insanity. So yeah, I mean, to stick to your guns in that sort of atmosphere, I think that's very noble, right? And I think kind of continuing on that trend, I mean, talking about sort of like where Tellor is now. I mean, Tellor also has a workshop that they had at ETH Online. So if you want to take a look at sort of how everything works under the hood, that's probably the best place to do it. But for this call, I mean, I'm kind of curious about sort of decision making that you're making at Tellor, right? Yeah. So I mean, recently you guys launched your V2, which was very exciting. Or a bunch of kind of great improvements there around scalability and that kind of thing. But also, I think you mentioned that also that you burned your admin key recently as well, which is, I think, kind of fits really nicely with this narrative of very decentralized, censorship resistant. So I mean, I'd love to kind of chat a little bit about sort of the thought process that went into actually burning that key, losing access to sort of the thing you've created in a way, and sort of just kind of the process of actually doing that. What was that like, and why now?
Yeah. Okay, so an admin key, for those who don't know, is like it's like this master switch that we could have in our contracts that allow us to make any changes we want to it. But what you use it for is to make upgrades, to change your contract. And so, but it could be used nefariously or maliciously. It's all powerful, basically. It's important to have that early on. You need to be nimble, and you need to, like, things break. You launched a mainnet and it's like it all could break. And you want to be able to quickly make fixes, and you don't want to have to wait for this decentralized governance that doesn't exist yet, and you don't have a community yet. And so it's okay to have an admin key. Most projects on Ethereum actually have them. I think the problem is that if there's a lack of transparency around the fact that an admin key exists and what it can do and not do, and also if you hold on to it too long. So there's a period of time where like it becomes natural for an admin key to be removed. And so we've been talking about it for a while. We've been around we launched to mainnet in August 2019. And we always said that when we had demand on our Oracle, or we got to a certain point where we made enough updates, we thought that we were, we've been on mainnet long enough, nothing is broke, or if anything broke, we fixed it. And we made, some updates that we now feel like our Oracle is ready, and doing good on its own. Then we'll burn it. We no longer really feel like a need that, like, we don't think this thing's going to break. And we've been around for a while. So we thought after V2 launch was a natural good spot to do it, because V2 was a big upgrade, and we wanted to launch that on our own. And so, yeah, we just felt like we've grown, we've matured enough. You could still argue it's early. It was really scary to burn it because, we still haven't, we haven't really established ourselves with a huge user base yet. And so what the questions that you have in mind are, what if you have to adapt the protocol as you get data from your customers? like you're in the market and you learn from if there is one or not, and you can change. Like, oh, we found out that people wanted faster updates, and so that was something we changed in V2 to make our Oracle a little bit faster. Things like that. You want to be able to collect that data and make changes. But now, now it's going to be slower. It's going to be a more decentralized process. The way that upgrades will work now is it goes to a token governance vote. And that's, you can imagine, for anybody that follows Ethereum's like EIPs or it just takes a while. The community has to discuss things and it has to go through this draft process and finalizing and auditing, and everybody's got to vote, and you got to get people to vote and those kind of things. But we're excited about that challenge too, because now it's we have to be stewards of the community, and we have to be, we actually have to further develop our community and help that foster that growth, so that you do have an active, engaged community that can vote on the upgrades of something like Tellor that ultimately holds quite a bit of value in its market cap and what it does for other projects. And that sort of goes back to why you want to build a project the right way, because eventually you want to get to the point where your community is important to you. And so you want them to be really interested in you and not just speculators, although speculators are important, but you don't want a community fully built of just token speculators that don't even care what you really do. And so building a community organically, having a token project that's very organic, and it can be tough to grow a project like that, but ultimately we think it's going to benefit us. Now that we're here and fully decentralized, we think we have a great community, the great foundations of the community. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I imagine, as like a software developer myself, sort of in a way like pushing the code onto the CD drive and then shipping out the CDs is like kind of equivalent to like burning the admin key. You can't just, the code is shipped, you can't touch it, right? Yeah, that's pretty terrifying to me.
It was a fun day too. Like we invited some of our associates, people that have helped us on the protocol in our history. Not a lot of people, but for this tiny office, like it was packed. 6 people is a lot of people for us, but so like, we had champagne and everything like that. And so it was like a big drum roll. And when you send the admin key to the 0 address, like it's gone. No one, you can no longer call that upgrade function. But nothing broke. Everything stayed working. And here we are. The real test is going to be V2.5. And I know we didn't even talk about V2, and we can, if you guys are interested. And we also didn't really talk about how Tellor works. So if anybody doesn't know how Tellor works, you can ask, and I give an overview of that. It might be, maybe you all already are very familiar with us, which would be a good thing. But so V2.5 is coming out. We have these, it's not as big as V2. It's, but they're important updates in terms of how our mining network functions. I can get into those details, but the point is that this is going to be a Tellor improvement proposal, a TIP. And so we're going to have, we've already written it up. I think tomorrow, actually, we're going to submit it. Our plan is either tomorrow or early next week to submit that TIP. It's actually, I believe it is already on GitHub, but we're going to share it with the community. And then it'll go through this process. And I don't know how long it'll take, whereas we, get community feedback on it, and it goes through an audit, and eventually it'll go through a vote. So this will be our first upgrade that we're going to do. That it's going to take us all, And we like to say we are Tellor, and this is our first time where we can actually put our walk the walk about it.
The first sort of full end-to-end experiment, basically. That's very exciting. Awesome. Cool. So yeah, I did drop a note in chat here. If anybody does have any questions, we can either do them live, or if you just want to drop them in text, we can do that too. So maybe I'll ask one more question while people think if they have any questions. So you, actually going back, you mentioned kind of the start in a way was at a hackathon, right? And I know when we first started talking as well about kind of ETH Online and everything, that yeah, you mentioned that, you know, hackathons and Tellor go way back, if you will, right? So I guess sort of maybe, you know, if you had, you know, another chance to be at a hackathon right now, if you were maybe a hacker at ETH Online, what would you be building right now? Or, you know, either what piece of the stack, or what would you be thinking about building? And you know, maybe if you could also speak to sort of, you know, the environment that hackathons provide, and why they're exciting, and
Sure.
and you know, also why they were a part of, you know, your history.
Well, so like my immediate thought about what I would build is actually something that we're working on as a team now, so I can't like really talk about it. But in general, what I think a good motto is for anybody that's getting into crypto and coming to hackathons and thinking about things to build is don't get sort of it's tempting to sort of try to like hack on a project that's like the soup du jour, especially with all the yield farming stuff going on now. It's easy to get pulled into that. And I think ultimately that won't lead you down the correct path for like a real meaningful career or a real meaningful project. And so our motto from the get-go, no matter what we are building and what we will build in the future, is build things that make sense, build things that you can build right now with current crypto technology and, you know, scalability specifically, and then build something that you ultimately want to be a part of long term. Like, because all these projects are a community, you know, blockchains is a community. And so make sure that whatever you're making isn't just something that's going to be like, it's going to make you money, but it's actually going to foster a community that you want to be ultimately a leader in and a part of, and you'll be proud of. So to go a step further, to be a little bit more practical, what that might mean is you can ask yourself, well, what really makes sense on a blockchain? Ultimately, what is like, why would you use a blockchain over just a regular database? You know, and it's what we believe is that it's really about unstoppable applications and censorship resistance. And so, and it's not about making money, a lot of money or anything like that, or, you know, making digital versions of legacy finance. But it's about making something that's slow and simple, but like it can't be stopped by any government or any one individual. And like, that's what's really cool about it. So these are areas that can be really improved on in all of DeFi. And so, you know, you can take any one of these projects, take a stable coin idea, but like think about like, how could I improve upon what Maker's doing or whomever, and not make it faster, but make it slower and more secure and more censorship proof. And that would be a really good niche to carve yourself if I was a hacker, because you will stand out to people, and there will be people that notice. Like, we're a project that we'd gravitate to someone like you, be like, you get it. And there's more people than just us that are like that get that kind of thing. And we ultimately think that those are the people that are going to survive long term. So,
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think exactly right. I mean, I think, you know, building on the platform with the ethos of the original ethos of the platform, right? I think that I mean, that aligns just, you know, perfectly. Yep. It's not about building. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
You're not just building what you're building, right? It's like, what are we building?
Exactly.
What is like this whole community? What is the Ethereum community building? Like, what are we making here? Like, are we quickly going to become like what Web 2.0 was? Is Web 3 going to just be a new Web 2 with blockchain? You know, like, I don't think that's what we want to build here. And that we could quickly get there. You could get there real fast. And there'd be enough money that people would be like, what are you talking about? Censorship resistance? Nah, you know, like, you could get there real fast. So, you also asked about, you know, just the events themselves. I would, so not just hackathons, but any convention or any event in crypto, like, don't be afraid to make friends and keep in contact with people that you've met at these things, because they will, like every event we've gone to and every hackathon we've gone to, there's some relationship that we started there that at some point made a big difference for us. That later became somebody introduced us to a project, or later gave us an idea that was a real inspiration for something we made, or they just became really good friends. It's kind of tough. Like you want to focus on building, but the relationship component is huge. So don't, that's like one of the biggest resources to leverage at a hackathon, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think, one of the great things about the Ethereum community is that we have so many of these opportunities to intermingle, I think, and, able to like meet each other. And I think kind of just generally across the board, like from what I found, like almost everyone is interested in being kind of a positive promoter of what other people are working on, provided, it's good and it follows the right ethos. And there are a lot of people in this community, especially, that are so down to help and so down to be part of the story.
Oh, yeah. No, I feel like people make it easy on you at these things.
For sure.
I'm not always the most, I don't know, depending on my mood, I'm not always the most outgoing person, but I've never had a problem at a ETH event.
Exactly. Awesome. It looks like we do have a question from the crowd. So it looks like Jack has a quick question for you. Jack, if you're able to unmute, share your video, you're already doing it. Perfect. Hey. I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey,
hey Mike. Yeah, I'm kind of new to the space a little bit, and I haven't gone deep into oracles yet. So maybe the right question is like, how does it work?
Yeah, no, we didn't even get into that. Sure.
Yeah, and that would be great to know. But yeah, like, what kind of data do you see can Tellor take real world data and ever like port it to the blockchain in a decentralized way? I'm trying to think of how that would work,
we do that. Yeah. That's exactly what we do.
So like, if the sun comes up today, like, how can you prove that the sun came up?
We could do that. We don't, that's not what Tellor does right now. We do numerical data and we focus on pricing data,
right.
But the fundamentals of it would apply for something like that as well. It kind of goes back to how did Bitcoin solve, like, how do you validate data in a network? And the concept was you use a competition and a set of incentives to incentivize honest behavior and disincentivize dishonest behavior. And so we sort of took that idea and what we did was, this will go into how Tellor works, is that we use competition. We built a proof of work protocol in a smart contract on Ethereum. And we have miners that they're not Ethereum miners, whatever. They specifically run a Tellor miner. And basically what happens is, like, a user would come to Tellor and request, let's say, some sort of off-chain. When you say real world data, what that means is that anything other than what's on Ethereum to Ethereum is off-chain data.
Right.
It could be in the real world, the internet.
Right.
So like a Bitcoin price is off-chain, and you have to get that from some real world source, whether it's a person or an API or an exchange or something like that.
Yeah.
And Ethereum can't read. That's called the Oracle problem. Like, blockchains can't access off-chain data. So anyway, so someone is on Ethereum, they want the Bitcoin price, or they want to know, did the sun come up, or they want to know what the weather was on this date.
Right.
You could create a network of individuals that have to compete for the right to say what that data is. And so, well, then how do you incentivize honesty for them to be honest? Well, you can give them a reward, just like Bitcoin, issues Bitcoin. So we have a token. Our miners get rewarded in TRB, but also in order to participate in this network, they have to stake 1,000 TRB, which is right now roughly $20,000 worth of TRB. and that can be slashed if they're dishonest. And so now you have an ability to dispute these data providers. So you have an anonymous open network. Anybody can come and join. You don't know who they are really, and you have the proper crypto economic incentives in place. You can bring almost any data on chain that way. Yeah, did I sufficiently answer the question?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So I guess the incentive is they lose $20,000 if they give the wrong price, kind of thing.
So like, you could read, anybody, in our network can see these submissions on chain. Like we actually have a dispute center. If you go to disputes.tellorscan.com, you can actually see the mining events as they're coming in live. And they happen we have 5-minute blocks, which is just like the time period for our updates. And you can see that these submissions come in. I'm sort of backing into describing how all the details of Tellor, but I'll go ahead and continue. We actually, for each request, so like if someone wants the Bitcoin US dollar price, we actually take the first 5 submissions in the whole network, the first 5 miners that solve the proof of work computation and submit their Bitcoin price from whatever source they want. Could be an API like from Binance or something, or Coinbase or whatever, or they could manually put in what they think it is. We take 5 and then we medianize, we take the median of all 5, and that gets posted on chain as the official value into a readable contract that projects can read from and get that data, because now it's on chain. And oh shoot, where was I going? Oh yeah, and so you can see all those submissions happen, and you can click dispute, and basically you pay a dispute fee. The important thing is you also have to properly incentivize honest disputers.
Right.
So you could spam. You could spam the network. If disputing was free and you wanted to shut down Tellor, you could just constantly dispute every value and take them all off chain. If it was free, you'd be like, I think they're all bad. But how do you want to make it so people will only dispute if it's actually a wrong value, like someone submitted $1 for the Bitcoin price. It's clearly a malicious act. So it's actually quite expensive to submit a dispute fee. But anyway, you just submit a dispute fee, and then it goes to a vote of our community. And there's a whole voting process, and there's a ways to dispute the result of a dispute. So we have a pretty robust dispute mechanism, and that's the bulk of our security. Is that none of these values on chain are 100% final. There's a concept of finality in blockchain. It's called probabilistic finality. It's like, have you ever like sent something on like a centralized exchange, and you have to wait like 6 confirmations for your Bitcoin transaction to go through? Like those confirmations are actual, like each confirmation is a new Bitcoin block happened. Right. And so the idea is that the more of these blocks that have happened since your transaction, the more probabilistic it is that it's final, meaning the network won't fork. And if I'm confusing you, just let me know. But
no, it's like a asymptote, or it approaches, finality kind of.
Yeah. So for us, like, there's such a great incentive. Oh, I should add this thing. When someone disputes a bad value on Tellor, if you successfully dispute it, and we all vote that was a bad value, you get that miner's stake. So the disputer gets rewarded, that miner gets slashed, and it goes to the disputer. So like you could call them validators almost, that they can comb through all the data getting submitted from Tellor and make sure it's clean. And if they find, if it's almost like you want to be the fastest person. We don't have like a lot of bad values that come on chain. They're pretty rare, but when they do, it's like payday for somebody. It's obviously a bad one. And so they don't last on chain very long. So for us, the longer a value has been put on chain by our network, the more probabilistic it is that you could consider it a final price. Like it won't get disputed, it'll stay on chain. And so we recommend, this is why being slow is safer. You know, Maker's Oracle has a 1 hour delay, their security module, which means that, you know, their prices are all delayed an hour. That way it gives people, their community a chance to correct something if something really bad happens with their Oracle. It's on an hour delay. So all the prices are an hour old, but that's really good practice. The longer you wait, the more expensive it would be to break that price. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Same thing with
makes sense.
same thing with Bitcoin. Like the longer you wait, the less incentive financially anybody would have to do something malicious.
Yeah. Okay.
So
That's really cool. That
yeah.
yeah, that's a cool system of like checks and balances. That,
Yeah. And that's what
See-
crypto is in a nutshell. Like sometimes all this stuff is hidden behind all this code, but in the end, it's really about the logic. It's not really about like, you know, the computer science element, although that's a huge component, but there's this crypto economics thing that really is where all the sweetness is, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for explaining that in a nutshell to me. I'll
Yeah.
give it back to
You're
Jacob
welcome.
now. And thanks for the founding story too. I found that really cool. I'm glad
Oh.
you went into, or both of you went into so much detail on that.
Yeah, no, it is a cool story, and I hope it inspires you guys. But yeah, usually off-chain data on in DeFi right now is pricing data. You know, right now that's what's most in demand, because
That makes
you know,
sense.
look, just if blockchains are slow and secure, like what are you going to want to transact in? It's usually high value transactions that are going to make sense on a slow but secure blockchain.
Right.
You know, you're going to want to do some sort of betting contract or some sort of financial contract that's got a lot of value riding on it if you're going to waste your time on a blockchain. And so that's why DeFi is the thing on Ethereum right now. It's because these are all high value, you know, financial contracts.
Right.
So it's
Makes
important
sense.
to be slow. But that's why we're focusing on pricing data.
Cool. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the question, Jack.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. I think we probably have time for one more question. I think, Vincenz, do you have a question? Is that why your hand is up?
Hey, yep.
All right, I'll turn it over to you then.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, how's it
Thank
going?
you. Pretty good. So actually, that was like a really perfect segue over to what I was going to ask. My interest is on, you know, focusing on what the future looks like, what the pipeline looks like for incoming data types that aren't just pricing pairing, and also pairing it with. So I'm curious to know what you think is coming down the pipeline. Outside of that, is it amounts of, you know, relatively high value information, or is it, you know, more like Boolean, you know, truth versus false? And then I'm curious on also what you were saying at the end there, which is because it's on a blockchain, which means cost is high to handle the transaction. What does the future of oracles being fed onto layer 2 solutions look like, where it could reduce that pricing and potentially bring on, you know, not necessarily high value, but still really important data that could benefit from this?
Cool. Good question. You know, we've heard a lot of people talk about insurance being one type of data type that makes sense on a blockchain. I've yet to see really a good implementation of that, but that makes sense, and it's something that oracles could definitely provide, like weather data. That was something that at least earlier this year or late last year, amongst the oracles, people were talking about insurance and weather data and things like that. But I don't know any farmers that are using blockchain for their insurance yet. But so it's just sort of like a concept, and things like that might be a far way away. I think DeFi is here to stay for a long period of time. The other thing that we've sort of thought about, you know, you can use oracles to bridge chains. So you could, you know, we've talked about
Separate from atomic swaps?
Well, like to using oracles to pass block headers back and forth and somehow validate data that way. That whole scenario is not my expertise at all, and we haven't really dived too far into it ourselves as a company. But those are two areas I think could be interesting. But we don't. One thing that we tend to not look too far ahead. You know, a lot of times people ask us what's our 2-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, and it's like in crypto you can't. You got to keep on your toes and focus on the here and now, and we pay attention to what's going on, of course. And the things happen so fast that, I mean, if we think about what we were thinking about last year, like I'm glad that we're not doing that now because everything has changed. So that's why it's important to stay nimble as a company, you know, stay small, stay lean, stay aware, stay engaged, because things happen rapidly, and who knows how things will be different once things start to scale at Ethereum. And as far as layer 2 goes, you know, we're actually, you know, are you familiar with matic?
Mhm.
So we're actually building out onto matic as our first sort of foray into layer 2, because they're basically like, I mean, they're just really easy to work with. And so we're excited about, you know, the experiment of that. We're excited to see, you know, how that might help us in terms of speed and cost, being able to have an oracle over there that has greater capabilities speed-wise and scaling-wise that it does on Ethereum, potentially. You know, these are things that ultimately, though, we haven't seen yet is we haven't seen a real demand on any of these, either fast layer 1s or layer 2 solutions. We haven't seen enough apps on there demanding oracles. Otherwise, we would be building over there. And so a lot of our solutions for layer 2 or a lot of our solutions, period, are demand, they kind of require people to be using them for it to make sense to build it. And so we've been hesitant to launch on these things, but we're going to do one on matic very soon, and we're excited to see what that does.
That doesn't exist at this time, right? You guys are building that right now.
Yeah, so it's really close. We were on their test net. You know, we were just talking about it this morning. It's pretty imminent for that. Are you looking to build something on matic that needs an oracle?
Yeah, we're, you know, tool agnostic. It's more of what our need is.
Okay.
There's two different things going on here. There's my hackathon project, which is reviewing security and building some grading system around different oracle feeds, paired with different oracle technologies, paired with different dApp architectures, and trying to help new dApp developers who are focusing on more real world build outs get sort of caught up, because we see it as probably the greatest weakness for real world applications coming onto the blockchain. And then my day job, we're focused on building settlement layers and marketplaces for electric microgrids, so they don't have to rely on traditional banking services. And so for us to be very beneficial to be able to plug in, you know, smart meter data, energy consumption, feed it in. It's not urgent. We can do that at a later time, but we're trying to see if it's something we could put in the first version.
Cool. Yeah. Well,
so it's not the layer value of like a layer 1.
Gotcha.
Obviously, yeah. Unless it's counterfactual, you know, sort of enforcement.
Well, I'll tell you what, just if you want to, we could connect offline and stay in touch. And as you're thinking through these things, like we love to just think through them with people, especially if it's related to, well, even if it's not related fully to oracles, but we like to think about this stuff and help people make the right decisions in the design phase of these things. And so, yeah, just reach out to me and then we can start a little chat and just keep in touch about it, whether it's for your hack project or something else.
Sure. Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. There's that kind of helpful conference meetup connection thing we just talked about.
Yeah.
It's happening live.
That was a live one.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again, everybody, for basically taking part. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for your participation. And Mike, big thank you for coming out and spending an hour with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Had a great time chatting, and yeah, it was awesome to kind of detail the whole story and how it works and how we got to where we are. And
I hope it wasn't too all over the place. It was like stream of consciousness there,
good.
but I hope you guys followed. And like I told the last gentleman, like any of you guys, if you guys are too shy or something, like you can reach out to me or anybody on the team. If you're a developer and you want to ask more technical questions, our CTO we love talking to people, so don't be afraid.
Awesome. And yeah, just for everybody, of course, you can find them in the sponsored Tellor channel.
Yep.
Of course, they've got prizes for using Tellor. So if you need data in your app,
get that TRB.
Come get that TRB. Exactly. So they'll be around the whole event. So don't feel shy at all. Just like what Mike said there. So awesome. With that, we will wrap this up. It was great chatting. Thanks again for your time.
My pleasure.
And catch everybody on Discord.